In today's video we're going to go through and build some Digi-Stilts. So a buddy of mine wanted me to build him some stilts for a costume of his, and I've always kind of enjoyed the idea of it, but I never actually had the application or need to build said Digi-Stilts. So I now had a reason to, and I was really happy to be able to facilitate building him a set. And now that I have kind of a bit of a knowledge on what we did and didn't enjoy with those first preliminary designs, and ultimately the ones that he ended up having worked good, but he's like, if I were to redo it again, let's kind of tweak this a little bit, build that, and move that over there type deal. So now I'm going to go through and build a set for myself. And that kind of sounds a little bit bad the way I said it there, but I've wanted the desire, or I've had the desire to build some, and now I have a reason to. And he was nice enough to give me a little bit of extra supplies that he had purchased. He was like, you know what, you wanted to build some, so here I ended up buying 2 sets of this type deal for some T-brackets, and he offered a few little extra parts here and there. I have myself purchased a few items for the build. The build so far is only going to cost me under $30. I think it was like $28 after tax to buy some flat strap steel and some other things. Well, let's go over the basic concept of what we're working with. So one of the designs that I had seen prior was to use a bottom base plate and then a 18-inch long piece that you would actually be standing on, working off of a 45. Now the 45 seems to be the more suited idea. We went with a 55 for his, so it just brought it up an extra 10 degrees, gave you a bit more of a dramatic lift. But he was saying that that actually kind of decreased the stability of it. So I think I'm going to keep mine off of a 45. Then you have 2 stabilizing pieces. So this design is very large and very clunky. So when we made his, what we ended up doing was we actually, which that miters off a little bit there, but like I said, this is just a real quick cut it and kind of stare at it for a second design. What we did was we shrunk up the design on his and used 2x4s. And we put everything right on top and then just had the base plate. So they're shrunk down quite a bit. And instead of having a 9-inch riser built into it like the prior design that you may have seen kind of thrown around there in the webs, which, I mean, I get the idea and the principle of it, but unless I'm making like a giant transformer foot or something like that, this is kind of very large and clunky. So what I'm going to do, cut down to where it's probably going to be just that large of a base. I'm going to run my board directly into the board, or into the 2x6, and I'm going to shrink it down. So instead of it being this tall, I'm going to have it right there, and then my foot up here, so I'm only gaining probably about a good 6 inches off of it. Reason being is your pivot point. If I had left these at 9 inches at the back, and I cut this down to this amount, and I put my foot here, it starts teetering pretty heavily, and that's going to be real easy to kind of fall over. So if I drop that dimension just a little bit more, lower my center of gravity, and since I have a size 12.5 or 13, depending on what shoe brand I go with, my foot should go to the end, and then it should throw the wedge point right here. And we'll kind of go over that a little bit more as we go through the build. I'll let you know my dimensions and what I come up with. But as for right now, it's just kind of preliminary to give you a general idea of what it's going to ultimately look like, somewhat, based off of another gentleman's similar design. And then we're going to have brackets that come to the side. I'm going to be cutting in half a piece of PVC coupling. That's a 4-inch for the thickness to go around my ankle and give me a little bit of room so I could throw in a cushion. Or if I needed to, any little extra bits in there, so if when I put the bolts on it, I need that little bit of extra room to put in a thicker piece of foam or some kind of piece of wood in there, I have that ability to have that extra room, and it's not going to be too goofy looking like it's going to be super huge around my foot or nothing, or ankle, kneecap rather. But that should be all that's needed for the top. I have a bungee cord for the back of each of them to act as a tendon, so that way it kind of helps pull everything nice and tight to your foot. Then I'm going to be running off of the basis of the old worn out pair of shoes that you bolt through to keep them permanently on there. There's a couple strap methods I've looked at, but I'm not super fond of the securing methods that have been used. And I've seen some people just structure using purely these little like 1/2-incher boards and done kind of a pyramid effect. So you would just have one board here, but that just doesn't when you work off of either just purely glue or pin nails, like some of the designs I saw, I'll use pin nails, I'll use glue, but I'll also use screws. So I have multiple areas for adding that extra strength and integrity, but that just seems like I don't feel comfortable being 180 pounds on that. I feel if I was 100 pounds, yeah, all day long. A gal doing a dress-up kind of cosplay and wanted something for a faunus or some kind of mythological creature, which is where you'd have the Digigrade more integrated for a bipod person, and that'd be perfect. But in this build, I'm not going with that. So hopefully you'll enjoy. A little bit of a long intro. If you do enjoy this, make sure to hit that subscribe button while you're at it. It helps out greatly. And let's get to this build. Alright, so I gathered a few things here for the project. I have the material I'm going to be using, which is planks off of a pallet. Surprise, surprise. But I'm going to use two of them, put them together, glue it, and pin nail it, so that way it has the strength of a 2x4. But there's two reasons I'm doing this. One, free material, of course. But two, what I actually was thinking on this a lot more on, is that a 2x4 is a single piece of wood. Yes, it can have better strength and structure, but it has one grain orientation. So if I use two planks of wood with dissimilar grain orientation, I can actually increase the strength that way. And I'm cutting down on the weight of it, being that it's just two thinner boards versus a full 2x4. And a lot of the 2x4s I have, I'm not really sure what material type they are, and they're just really heavy. So I'm trying to cut down weight. This is going to be strapped to my legs after all, so I don't want to be, feeling like I can only walk around for 15 minutes before I'm exhausted. And I am going to have some steel, but it is thinner grade steel. The steel that I got is 1/8 inch by 1 inch, and they're 3 feet long. So I got two of those. They were $5.98. I got two bungees, and these ones are 21 inches. These are actually the same ones that my buddy and I used on his pair that work really good. And the idea behind it is that you can use these eyelet holes to hook on screws on the sides of the knee brace. And then on the dead center here, you torque it down and hook it off of a single eye bolt onto a little quick link or carabiner, and it pulls it nice and tight. After you walk for a little while, it'll be very hard, but then it kind of loosens up a little bit, being as that it's actually rubber bungees. And I preferred the rubber just because of the strength and walking around and the potential that my ankles are going to be hitting it or I can bump it on things. I looked at the fabric ones, and I've seen a couple people go that route. They are cheaper. It's just I'm going to be trusting walking around and not potentially snapping an ankle, so I wanted something a little bit more strong. These were about $2 a piece, so that's not too bad there. I got I think this is 4-inch. Yeah, 4-inch coupling, and I'm going to actually cut on both sides of it and make two knee braces out of it. That's one of the common themes a lot of people end up doing. I went with a 4-inch because it could potentially have worked with a 3-inch around my leg, but for how snug the fit would have been, there would be no capability for foam. And I don't know if I'm going to need it yet. And I'd also like that extra little bit of breathing room for putting the bolts on, so that way I can have the nuts hanging on either side without any potential dragging or hitting on my leg, and I can just put some kind of foam in there. And I have a couple different variations. Fabric is another possibility. A couple different things I can work with depending on how thick I need it to be. So that'll be the knee braces. This will be the sides, eye bolts, quick links. I already had a bolt kit that would technically be an additional purchase. So some of this is kind of hard to say that it is technically only a $28 build, because I had some of the prior or prerequisites to that. Got the drill press out for drilling the holes. I got belt sander out for kind of just knocking down some of the scale or just rough cuts on the boards themselves. I could pop out the old planers just sitting right there and work that too, but this will be nice to kind of get some sculpting, so it's not just super rudimentary looking. I can play around with it. It'll still look good. The other pair look good too. So we shall see from there. And on to the next bit. quick little update for you. So the stilts, I actually went through and pretty much finished them out. Went to a Halloween party last night. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun, and I finished out the last few little keystrokes on it. I can kind of go over what I did on those. But as an update to what's going on right now, in Colorado, we're getting our first major cold front. A lot of water coming through and a lot of rain that's going to turn into snow here today. So I was going through and batting down the hatches the following day after the initial build so far of the stilts, and had a little accident. Ended up actually slicing into my finger while trying to close one of our storm windows. Wasn't being too smart with a knife trying to get one of the little clips to pop in place. It slid and got my finger. So that's bandaged up. But I'm going to keep on trucking on. I'm going to go through and do some final tuning on the stilts, get them up to snuff. And then I think I'm going to go through and spray paint them black. That way they just kind of go with every outfit, and they're not just a block of wood with shoes attached to them. They actually kind of will meld and blend into whatever I'm wearing them for. So let me go over what they look like. So they are pretty much complete. I went through and attached the T-brackets. You'll see that in the earlier part. I also cut the metal for the sides, and I have attached them. Get some light here. I have attached them via 2 bolts to the knee braces, and you saw I was cutting these in half. The bungee cords that I had purchased were just a couple inches too short, so instead of getting the 24s like I should, I got the 21s. So that 3 inches definitely caused this to not quite reach. I could have overstretched it and left it in a stretched state for a while, and then it would have worked. But what ended up happening was my brother, to whom which we had the party at, him and his good roommate's house as well, had these bungee cords. They're a little older and they're already stretched out, so they worked perfectly. So in a non-tense state, they kind of sit here, and then once you put your leg in, you get that little bit of retention. And it just kind of holds it right up to your leg, right on the knee as you want. And then just some basic shoes. These were just, I think, like $5-10 shoes on sale that I had from Walmart, and used them for yard work for a while, so they're a little beat up and wore out, so they were the perfect candidate to be able to become permanently part of this. I can always take out the shoe and swap it out with another one down the road if I need to. But there it is in almost all of its glory. Got the eye bolt mounted in the back. One idea that might actually work pretty good too is that instead of going with as long of a bungee cord, you can still technically go with 2 shorter bungee cords. And my buddy had the idea, instead of mounting one in the back, as you can see this is having some mild cracking. Now it's glued, so it'll be permanent, but it will potentially have some future failure. What you can do is mount on the sides 2 smaller eye bolts and go with 2 short bungees to either side. And you can mix going with the rubber if you wanted to, and go with the cheaper ones and go off of that idea. You just want a mild amount of retention. For this design, going off of the 45 versus on his we went with a 55. The 55, you want more actual bungee in the back to keep it attached and lifting your heel to yourself. Otherwise, it tires out your ankles real quickly if you don't have that extra brace, pretty much having to really push this thing forward to get your boot on, or shoe. So that's that main part. I went a little too hog wild with the bolts and screws. It definitely doesn't need that much structuring. I have yet to put the pads I plan on putting on the bottom here. I was going to have some chunks of rubber I put on there for grip, and I will eventually do that. But for right now, we tried it out, and it actually works great. Just using it as is on, we used laminate flooring throughout pretty much the hall of the house that we were in. And then we went out onto just a normal deck in the backyard, concrete, dirt. All of that seems to work great off of this larger platform, which is awesome. And yeah, doing the 4 bolts was better than doing the 1, so that way I didn't get any pivot out of the knee. So it actually just stayed glued right to you. I don't have any foam, but just with my normal pants and the distance that I have, this is pretty well good to go. I might eventually put something over just the bolts, but I didn't feel them. Oddly enough, moving around, accentuating. I had my brother try this out. My good friend was trying it out too. And these are a lot easier than his, from what he was telling me. just going off of the pivot point and off of your platform being just over your main primary platform for what you actually stand on, because his is up here, so it puts all of your balance behind. So little improvements. Make sure that your main balance point is going to be over your platform. So however much you augment or change this, just make sure that that's good. The T-brackets on a couple of different models, his included as well as mine, have shown that they are lightly bent to conform to how the foot is, but a few people have actually said in some different forums too that use these a lot. They'll actually take these pieces of metal and bend them inwards if they use a larger coupling to encompass the knee, but they want to have a contour a little bit better for their costume. You can bend this steel and still have rigidity to it, as long as you sacrifice just having a little bit more weight, because you could go aluminum, but it's not going to have near the strength. So if you did topple over, it would either potentially bend easy or shear, and then that's another point that could potentially get you in the leg. This design so far, I made sure my metal was well below on each side, and I ground smooth on the sides here, so that way there's nothing that I could topple over or snag in a costume. So yeah, kind of a quick little update. I'm going to go through, do some final touches on it. I think I'm going to sand these corners down a little bit, just kind of round them. When you're walking, you'll notice that you kind of hit on these corners a lot. So if it's rounded, it'll give you a better ability, just like your foot, to actually kind of land a little bit more flat. And I was noticing I was kind of hitting and then rolling my foot forward. So I think if I round these just a little bit, it might give me a little bit better direction to land it onto the rubber that I put in here. And also if I sculpt this first and then attach the rubber, I think it'll just work a lot better. So yeah, let's get to it. So I'm in the shop, getting on the final stages of paint, and I'm getting everything set up and it's all looking good. And I've been in here for just a little while, not too long, just a couple hours. And outside has changed completely from what I left it as. It was just starting to rain a little bit, still green, not bad, look good outside. Well, this winter weather advisory had rolled in, which is why we kind of added on the hatches and why I ended up hurting my finger. And I returned to a different looking outside. It's snowing like crazy, and it was very unexpected to be seeing such a change of scenery outside. So, let's get back to the build and finish her on up. Alright, so here it is. It turned out really good. I am very excited with the end result. The curving on the inside, it's pretty much purely for looks. If this is going to be some creature of the night or some crazy cool outfit that you're going to be wearing, some ghouls and goblins or something like that, you're going to want something that looks a little bit more like a hoof or like just some kind of odd alien foot of some kind. And I'm really happy with the outward finish and result of it. They still work good. I have got rubber on the bottom of them, so that way I can go indoors and outdoors just like a shoe. And I'll have grip. I won't have any issues with falling over because I'm on a plank of wood sliding around on a smooth surface. I'll actually have grip on the bottom. They function well, they look good, and I'm happy with the end result. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and hit that like button and subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you get notifications every time that I upload a video. Thank you very much, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Have yourself a good one.